Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Beavers, the Digital Projects and Preservation Librarian here at CLRC. And before we get started, here is what CLRC/I can do for you. So upon request, I can do site visits where I provide guidance on preservation, archival basics, and evaluate members' collections to see what is a potential digitization project or what repository would be best for the materials or collection. And I provide in-person and virtual training on digitizing and creating metadata and getting you started on creating finding aids or getting existing ones up on Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative, or Empire ADC, for grant and non-grant projects. We also provide a way for members to make their typed materials searchable by running them through OCR or optical character recognition. And another service is our digital dark archive, which is a backup of a backup of a backup of your digitized materials. So it will be your last resource for retrieving your digitized collections if something were to happen to your other backups. I coordinate with members on scheduling when they can come in and use our in-house digitization equipment. I'm also the one you contact if you are interested in borrowing our loanable digitization equipment, which is listed on our website under Digitization Lab. Additionally, I am your liaison for the digital collection services we provide to members, such as New York Heritage Digital Collections, New York State Historic Newspapers, and Empire ADC, to name a few. And those are repositories that your materials and collections can be made available to the public, in addition to your own repository. So in short, New York Heritage is for seeing materials, Historic Newspapers is looking through New York State newspapers, and Empire ADC is for finding aids. We also have Empire State Immersive Experiences, or EASY, which is currently being worked on, and that is a repository for 360-degree images. And if you see something that needs to be edited or updated on any of those sites, please let me know. I also want to mention that we collaborate with DIPSNY, or Documentary Heritage and Preservation Services of New York. They can do a variety of free assessments, and they know to refer you to us if you are in one of our counties. And another collaboration is with Consider the Source New York, a free community resource that organizations can upload primary sources for teachers to use in creating lesson plans. As well as I digitize and create metadata for in-house Digitization Lab, or DigLab, grant projects, and I handle CLRC's Access and Digitization Grants. If you have any questions at any point, you can use the chat, and I'll try to check it before moving on to the next slide. And just to make things a bit easier, I can take questions at the end. All right, so I will cover general information on the grant, talk about the pre and full applications, identify projects, what successful applications tend to have, go over our Digitization Lab or DigLab contracts, provide many project examples, go through the grant timeline, and then answer questions and give you my contact information if you don't already have it. So by knowing what the Access and Digitization Grant process is, will hopefully prepare you to put forth a project that is fully formed and gets easy approval from our committees. So this year we have a budget of $50,000 for the grant, and we've tended to fund, at least in part, all viable projects. And this year we'll see how many applications come through and what our review committees think. You need to be a member of CLRC from one of the 4 counties listed and shown. If you're part of a BOCES, Madison, Oneida BOCES, Oneida, Herkimer, Madison BOCES, and Oswego, Onondaga, Cortland, Madison BOCES are members, as well as branch, city, and suburban libraries under the Mid-York Library System and the Onondaga County Public Library. So, and you need to be a full or an affiliate membership level, and you can check your membership level. And if you are a member at our websites, I will provide these slides to registrants, and just a while ago I added the slide to our website, so you can look at it there. And these will also be on our YouTube channel, so you can access the links. For those of you who are in one of our counties and are interested in joining, please see if you are already a member, and if not, see which membership level best fits your organization. If you are unable to join but would like your materials available on New York Heritage, consider collaborating with your local library. And lastly, this grant will be reviewed by our Library Resources and Services Committee, as well as an external review committee. The LRS committee is made up of representatives from our members, and those on the committee can still apply for this grant and our other grants. And they and the external reviewers, who are made up of colleagues from our other library councils of the state, will go through all the full applications, judge them on their worthiness, plan, and budget. And then the final step is our Board of Trustees approves those recommendations, and then I will notify you of the results. One of the benefits of the structure is that I can advocate on behalf of your project, since I'm not part of the group that makes the decisions. And so the more information you provide and answer questions, the more I'm able to explain it to the committee and board. So the pre-application, we require it, and this is to allow staff to give feedback on the application and to issue a Digitization Lab or DigLab quote for the project. If you are requesting the DigLab to do your project and you're also obtaining a vendor quote, but know that you will not be able to do the metadata yourself, be sure to put that in your application. Like, I would like the Digitization Lab to do my project, but if it is unable to take it on and my project is digitized by a vendor, I would like CLRC staff to create the metadata, as I will be unable to do it myself. There is a question on copyright, so if you need help figuring out what the copyright is for your project, please email me and I can help you with that. Also in the pre-application this year, please include budget information as best you can. Like, if you're going to hire someone to digitize and create metadata, then put an estimate of the number of hours you think it will take times the hourly rate. So as an example, you estimate it will take 160 hours and you're going to pay someone $20 an hour, and that will come out to $3,200. You don't need to have a vendor quote already. And if you do have one, wait until you receive feedback, as you might have to obtain a new quote. And you don't need to have copyright permission, but if you have it, you can email it to me now. After you have submitted the pre-application, we will review it and see if anything is missing or needs to be added or elaborated on. And then I will email you the feedback to either let you know where in your application there needs to be improvement, or everything is good and you can fill out the full application. If you receive feedback telling you to make edits, please make sure you do them and include them in the full application. If you do not need to make any changes, just copy and paste what you put in the pre-application into the full application and be sure to include budget information. The full application will be available after the pre-application deadline, and you must submit a pre-application in order to submit a full application. The full application is available after the pre-application, and again, you must have submitted a pre-application in order for your full application to be considered. Within the full application, you will need to fill in the budget information and documents that you need to email to me either before or after you have submitted the full application, and if they apply to your project, are a vendor quote and copyright permissions. If you requested a DigLab quote or filled out a request for one, I will reach out to get information to create a quote and then send it to you, and I will also connect it to your project so you don't have to send it to me. But if you want to make sure that you feel like you've sent in everything, you can. We are still requiring an outside vendor quote in case the DigLab is unable to take on your project, as we are very close to not having a backlog of projects, and the vendor quote is to ensure all applications have a chance of being funded. We generally see a range of projects that people apply for, and the biggest and most common one is digitization projects. So this is the conversion of an analog resource or physical item like a yearbook or something that exists physically into a digital copy. So then a PDF of a digitized yearbook, or a physical photograph into a TIFF or JPEG. And this is where you're starting from an existing resource or item, digitizing it, creating metadata, and then uploading it to a repository like New York Heritage, New York State Historic Newspapers, or your own repository or multiple repositories. We can work with a wide variety of formats. So in the DigLab, we've digitized photographs, yearbooks, registers, cemetery and hotel, newspapers that are bound and unbound, glass plate negatives of various sizes, photograph slides and negatives, art exhibition catalogs and scrapbooks, to name a few. And digital formats we use are TIFF, JPEG, PDF, audio files, and video files. The audio and video files might have to be exported as other formats in order for them to be uploaded, but otherwise we're pretty flexible. The focus is on creating access to these historical and cultural heritage materials. The materials need to be publicly available, so in a repository, and the repository needs to have a repository structure, which is something that is searchable, has an interface that can be used to search the database that has the materials and records with metadata, and not be images on a website with no information. One of the requirements of this grant is that materials are not behind a paywall, so they are accessible to the public without any impediments. We do have room for flexibility, but it needs to be somewhere that is accessible. And the materials and collections, as I've already said, can be up on more than one repository because it does not hurt to have them up in multiple locations. If you have materials that don't seem like they would fit in New York Heritage, it doesn't mean that they are not eligible for this grant. It just means that we would have a conversation about where they are going to end up and how they're going to be accessible. So I encourage you and those of you who have projects that you're unsure of to reach out to me, and we can discuss the particulars of your project and help work it out and make sure your project is eligible and explain how it's eligible to the review committees. Another type of project we receive and is an aspect of digitization is metadata. So metadata is data about data. And a way to look at it is it's the descriptive work or cataloging that happens to make digital assets accessible. It helps describe things and helps you and others when searching and browsing materials. And this especially applies to materials that might not end up in one of our repositories, which I'll give an example when we get to the project examples. We do require that you know your metadata and that it falls under nationally recognized standards, which again feeds into that repository structure that we're looking for. You can use this grant to enhance existing metadata in addition to creating metadata. It can also be used to enhance and create finding aids, which are under Empire ADC, and CLRC will cover the one-time setup fee and the first-year annual fee for new members to Empire ADC. We really want digitized materials to be easily accessible, and since the majority of projects that we fund are digitization projects that have a metadata component, metadata creation is a likely part of your project and a requirement for repositories. We also accept projects where the materials or collection has been digitized or is born digital, so you just need to create the metadata and then put it up in a repository or augment them or add to what you already have, so you make them more easily accessible. Lastly, the materials have to be accessible because this isn't a way to catalog or create metadata for your content management system that you use internally. So this has to be something the public can access. So this is an external facing project. This information on unsupported expenses is also on our website, but I'll still go over it. So we do not support, cover, or fund expenses for rent, heat, or electricity. We do not cover the purchase of new materials. You need to already possess them. We also do not cover the purchase or direct payments to libraries for interlibrary loan costs. There are other programs in place for interlibrary loan. We also do not allow for the purchase of an integrated library system for individual libraries. So AKA, we do not fund the creation of a repository. This is because this is a smaller grant and not really a large all-encompassing grant that we're giving out. We also do not fund hours an employee would already be working. The purpose of the grant is to increase capacity, so we are not subsidizing existing salaries. So if you already have a full-time staff member who is going to be doing this work, We wouldn't pay that staff member to do the work as part of the number of hours they are already working. If you will be doing a project in-house, you might need to hire someone part-time to do the work to increase your capacity. Or if you have a part-time library employee who is interested in doing parts of the project, please include that in your application that you have a part-time employee who will do the work, and that will therefore be increasing your capacity. Hiring someone to do the work can be trying and hard to work through for some organizations. We want to increase your capacity and don't want to subsidize what you are already doing. If you need help finding someone to hire, please reach out to me and we can check with schools or graduate schools like Syracuse University iSchool to see if any graduate students would be interested. Finally, we are not able to fund projects that don't meet copyright requirements. So if you don't have the copyright owner's permission to share the materials, we aren't going to fund this digitization and metadata project since the end goal is to share the materials, but I can always help you with copyright. That's why throughout the application process, it's very important that you have the proper permissions or documentation for copyright. Our review committees do ask if these projects have copyright permissions, and if the answer is uncertain, then we would sometimes not fund or have to wait until a clear answer is received before approving funding. If you don't have copyright permission, try to obtain it or try your best in finding out who the copyright owner is and let me know if you are unsuccessful. And of course, as I mentioned, you can always reach out to me if you need help. When identifying projects, first you want to make sure you're identifying materials that are appropriate to be shared publicly, which meshes with the New York Heritage Collection Development Policy linked on this page. We want materials to be of interest to a general audience, but if they are materials that are more sought after by a specific audience, this grant is also for that. One example is actually the Fletcher Steel scrapbooks, which are full of garden architecture photographs and planning and design sketches. And these were desired by a certain audience and were always in use. So by digitizing them, people have access to them and the original materials aren't always in use. You should consider copyright and privacy or access restrictions, such as having materials that were donated with strict privacy restrictions or access restrictions, and depending on the restrictions, shouldn't be digitized and made freely available on the internet. There might be ethical considerations, such as medical records that are under HIPAA restrictions, or even just sensitive materials that might result in some people being unhappy that their personal details are being shared. So when identifying projects, you might want to think about the best way to process them, and this gets into the activities of the grant. So who's going to be doing the work and how, and you might consider doing a project in-house, as I mentioned, and hiring someone or increasing someone's part-time hours to do the project, or hire a vendor, but then you need to consider who will do the cataloging or metadata creation. If scanning equipment is an issue and/or problem, as our member, we have scanners that we loan out, or if you're close to our office, just schedule a day and time to come in and use our equipment. Another consideration is the type of materials. Do you have the equipment or the ability to handle oversized materials, or the quantity of materials? Are the materials in really bad condition? Do you smell vinegar coming from anywhere and not from a kitchen? And if you do happen to smell vinegar coming from any of your collections and materials, then vinegar syndrome has started and you need to separate that item that smells like vinegar from the rest. On staffing, what kind of time and talent do you have available to you? It's great to hire an intern and/or temporary workers, but there's also the time it takes to train them and supervise. Another part to consider that relates to metadata creation is how much of an expert do you need to be to process the materials. Some can be easy to do and self-describing, like a yearbook project. Whereas a photograph that's been in a drawer, you might not have the context or information to know what it is in order to fully describe it. So that photograph might require a lot more subject knowledge of what it is and what's going on. Possibly the biggest factor when asking for a grant is how much it will cost. Once you've figured out who's going to do the work and how they're doing it, we like to see a reasonable budget in terms of have you thought it through and how long the project is going to take. Make sure you're accounting for your costs appropriately. We don't want you going over budget and we don't want you going under budget. Show your math when you've submitted the budget, because then we can check your math and see if we agree, like the example I showed earlier. And of course, if you need help, please reach out to us and we can talk through all these factors. We'd much rather help you figure that out in advance and have you submit an application that is reasonable and isn't realistic in terms of your goals and what you're hoping to accomplish. Successful applications have a well thought out project plan where they have a certain amount of concisiveness, but not so much information that it's hard to get to the crux of what you're asking for and what you're trying to do. A good amount of detail is good and helps us to assess whether your plan is reasonable and detailed enough. Try to keep all this in mind when you do your final application. Show your math for your budget. You can show your hourly rate and how many hours you are expecting a project to take, and we can say whether or not it seems reasonable. Don't forget about copyright. Reach out to the copyright owner or holder and get written permission from them that you can then submit by email to me. If you are unable to find the copyright owner, let me know. Same with vendor quotes or any vendor documentation. Vendor documentation can be the quote from the vendor or any documents from them about what they're going to do, what they're charging, and any other information. We like to see institutions or organizations complete their projects successfully and on time, but we are understanding if something comes up, please just let us know. A hypothetical would be if you had a grant from us 3 years ago and haven't done anything on it, then that doesn't look very good. We do have deadlines and a timeline for these projects, but we are reasonable in working with you on those timelines if something comes up. Our interim and final reports are easy and there aren't many questions. The questions are something like, what did you end up actually doing and how did that differ from what you expected? Do you have any feedback or advice on the process? We don't need receipts or a budget return. We just want to know what you've accomplished and how it went, and they should both take around 10 minutes to complete. And something else to consider and remember, large projects can be split across multiple years. Our Digitization Lab or DigLab. In the past, we've handled a good portion of our projects in-house, and hopefully with the reduction in backlog of projects, we'll be able to handle what we used to. I've been tackling the few remaining projects, so we are accepting projects in-house. As I mentioned before, we digitize photographs, yearbooks, newspapers, catalogs, scrapbooks, and more. And we also can do born digital projects. And as always, we do the upload process for you, but if you are interested in uploading your collections, let me know and I can train you and get you set up to do it. Also, with DigLab, you can use this DigLab quote request form link or go to our website and go under Digitization Lab to access the form. Whichever way you use the form, be sure to give the number of photographs or a couple of samples of page totals of a document or a monograph. Also, if the materials are bound or loose, and if you prefer that the materials remain bound. Also provide information about the size or range of your materials, as that will help us determine which equipment can be used. Like if it's greater than 10 by 15, we know it will fit on our Click Mini and the copy stand. And here are project examples. So these are grant projects that were digitized in the DigLab and metadata was created. So way earlier, I mentioned that there was a collection that went into a different repository, and that collection was Colgate University Library's Alma Gracie Stokey Papers, which is freely available through the University Libraries of Colgate University's JSTOR. And these are projects where metadata was created, and the last one is a project in progress. Next are newspaper projects that are a mix of DigLab digitization and Northern New York Library Network digitization. They are our sibling council to the north. They do digitization of microfilm and they integrate digitized files to New York State historic newspapers. So if you have digitized files of newspapers, like the Tully Area Historical Society did from Fulton Postcards, who digitized their microfilm newspapers, you can still apply for this grant to have those files uploaded onto New York State historic newspapers. And then here are examples of members using vendors to have their materials digitized. And in some cases, the metadata was done by the DigLab, or it was done by somebody that they had to do, or in the case of the newspapers, I believe Northern does minimal metadata that's needed. And these are projects that members did in-house. So they digitized and then reached out to me to receive training on creating metadata. Here's the grant, this grant cycles timeline. So the pre-application is due November 12th. After that, you'll receive an email with feedback or letting you know that you're good to go and can fill out the full application. And you'll also receive a DigLab quote if you requested one. Then you need to obtain a vendor quote and then email it to me. January 16th is the last day to request a consultation with me. If we've already scheduled a meeting after that day, you're okay. Then January 31st, which is a Saturday, is a deadline for the full application. So your full application must be submitted and vendor quote, copyright permissions, and DigLab quote emailed to me. Then in mid-February is when the LRS committee and external reviewers will meet to review applications. In March is when the Board of Trustees will meet to approve the committee and reviewers' recommendations. Then after the meeting, I will email recipients on what the LRS committee and board have granted them. I will also send out an announcement email of the grant awardees. And then a little after that, we will ask the grant awardees to sign a grant agreement, and then we'll mail out the checks. Fast forward to January, you will have to submit an interim report, which I will make available on our website and also send out to grant awardees. And this is to let me know where you are in the project, how much you have left to do, or if you haven't started, but now you will, and if you need any help. If something comes up that impacts the project, you can let me know in the interim report, but definitely email me so I know. The final deadline is June 30th, where you need to complete your project and spend all the money, and you'll have to fill out a final report. And questions, but I can let you know right now, the grant application worksheet and pre-application are live. I advise you to use the grant application worksheet, as you can save your answers unlike the Google Forms, where you'll lose whatever information you've typed if you exit out of it. If you use the worksheet, it shouldn't take long to fill out the pre-application if you have everything prepared, since it's not meant to be overly lengthy because there are not large amounts. These aren't large amounts of money. And as I let you sink in all this information, any questions or anything you want me to expand on? Let me take a water break. And if not, here's my contact information. It's also on our website. If there aren't any questions, I'll give one more minute to see if anybody has anything. But if you have questions after this, here's my email. Feel free to email me or call me, and we can talk about your project or anything DigLab related. And so I realize this might have been a lot of information all at once, and you can always have questions afterwards. Let's see. Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, I want to thank you all for coming and for viewing this recording. I will let you all go and have a good rest of your day.